And coming up on the wrap tonight, Rand Paul rules Iowa. But how about Hillary? Republicans in Congress are working on a bill that would halt the president's Iran agreement. But will Senate Democrats get in the way? And once again, the Secret Service is in hot water. We discuss all of that, plus yay or nay and potluck. This is the Daily Wrap, live from New York City. And hello and welcome to the Daily Wrap. Joining me tonight, SiriusXM host, Forbes.com columnist, and the human equivalent of a dry, persistent cough.
I don't know what that means, but I don't think I like it.
He's my co-host, Rick Unger, and yes, I stole that line from Letterman. And she is the editor of JaneUnchained.com. I like that. Jane Velez Mitchell makes her debut on the Daily Wrap. And finally, he is the executive editor of Newsmax, and therefore is kind of a big deal. Ken Chandler is here as well.
Well, he thinks so.
Welcome all. Let's go to the Daily Download.
This is the way it's going to be.
And Senator Rand Paul finally getting some good news today, according to a new Quinnipiac swing state poll. Mr. Paul leads the former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton 44 to 41% in Colorado, 43 to 42 in Iowa, and 47 to 43 in Virginia. And here's some interesting data on Mrs. Clinton. The same poll asked respondents if Hillary was honest and trustworthy or not. The email scandal certainly taking its toll on her in Colorado. Only 38% finding Clinton honest and trustworthy, and a whopping 56% not so much. In Iowa, 43% find her honest and trustworthy, and 49% do not. In Virginia, 52% find her not honest and trustworthy. Are we seeing a theme here? Rick, at some point, we're starting to see the effects of the email scandal having an effect, at least on the trust factor. The question is, will this make a difference in whether people actually vote for her or not?
You know, it's so interesting. I find Virginia fascinating because, as you correctly pointed out, she doesn't do very well on the whole trust thing. In fact, she's down from a month ago. She's doing worse. But guess what? Her numbers are up overall against Republican candidates. Against Jeb Bush, who she was tied with at 42-42, she's now 47-40.
Can I explain this for you, Rick?
Please.
Okay.
Please.
Northern Virginia. What do people do in Northern Virginia?
Absolutely.
They work in D.C.
Absolutely.
A Democratic president is much better for jobs in Northern Virginia than a Republican.
But how do you explain that versus last month? She's actually improved 5 points, but her trustworthy numbers are worse.
Well, I'd like to jump in as a woman and say that I think what's happening to Hillary Clinton is right up there with the Salem witch trials. As she has a target on her back, and everybody's out to get her for different reasons. The media is out to get her because they don't want a coronation. That's bad television, bad ratings. Progressives, well, they want Elizabeth Warren to run. And, of course, the Republicans want her to be involved in some kind of slugfest to weaken her so she doesn't waltz to the nomination with all that money and cash to use on Republicans. So basically, everybody but her core constituency is attacking her, and I don't think it's fair, and I think it's dangerous because a lot of women, like me, might relate to that kind of situation where you're damned if you do and damned if you don't, and they might be sort of empathizing with what Hillary's going through right now.
That's interesting that you bring up attack and that everybody's going after her. I agree with what you say about the media part. Nobody wants to see Hillary go unchallenged to the nomination and then win by 10 points in the general, which would never happen. But these are self-inflicted wounds. She didn't have to put an email server in
Are they
Chappaqua.
important? Yeah, but yet she's probably got the only email server that hasn't been hacked. We talked about this last night.
And to have
State
that foresight is
Department was
amazing.
hacked. The White House was hacked. For all we know, Hillary was the smart one. Hers weren't hacked so far as we know.
What a crystal ball.
Listen, I think more importantly, we've learned something. We talked about before the show. We don't know where Jane sits on these things. We now know she's on the right side.
Well, listen, I think it's a ginned-up controversy. I mean, email. She did submit something like 30,000 emails for review. Okay, so she was using the wrong cell phone. You know, BFD. I mean, it's not equivalent to, let's say, invading a country under false pretenses, saying that there's weapons of mass destruction when there aren't. That's what I'd call a real scandal.
Okay, so to the trust factor point, Bill Clinton, obviously, late in his presidency, post-Monica, his approval ratings go to somewhere around 70%. And obviously nobody trusted him with, you know, you don't know the definition of the word is, and he lied under oath, and he was actually impeached, and all these things. No, but I'm making a point. Yeah. The point is that nobody cared. Right? And I wonder, Ken, how much trust really plays a role in people's decisions in voting for somebody or not. It used to play a very big role. Now I don't get that feeling.
Not so much. I think it's more about competence. I think if people, I think there's a sort of factor that you build in that politicians, they're not quite like you and I. They do stuff. That's what they do. And I think you look at Hillary Clinton and you think, you imagine if she was in the White House, would she be a good president? Forget the emails, forget all the other scandals. At the end of the day, that's what they're going to decide.
That's right. That's how people actually think.
And I think there's no foil as well, Jane. I think, in other words, on the Republican side, you can't look at somebody necessarily, the bigger candidates that have announced, or at least are going to announce, and say, oh, there's somebody I could definitely trust. That's an upstanding individual. Maybe Jeb Bush fits that role, however.
I don't think Jeb Bush fits that role. I mean, he has said publicly that he doesn't think his success has anything to do with his family name. Hello? I mean, delusional at the very least. So I don't necessarily, while he may come off as sort of Mayberry wholesome, I don't think that necessarily equates to being trustworthy, because we all know today that people can put on a pretty good wholesome act. They even have a school for that, I think, in the nation's capital.
But can I make a point? This is like all noise. People are not really paying attention to this. They hear little bits and pieces about email scandals and
they won't
Jeb
until 2
pretending
months
to be
before the
a
election.
Hispanic. But they're not going to remember this when they go to vote in 18 months' time.
It is, yeah. It's even more. I think it's 20 months from now.
But what are we going to do between now and then if we don't talk about
We'll
it?
talk about it.
Well, we'll talk about it. It's the point of the show.
We gotta
Anyway,
make a
let's
living
talk
too.
about Senator Rand Paul. The media has not been very kind to Mr. Paul. Here he is yesterday on the Today Show with Savannah Guthrie.
You have had views in the past on foreign policy that are somewhat unorthodox, but you seem to have changed over the years. You once said Iran was not a threat. Now you say it is. You once proposed ending foreign aid to Israel. You now support it, at least for the time being. And you once offered to drastically cut. Once drastically wanted to cut defense spending, and now you want to increase it 16%. So I just wonder if you've mellowed out.
Oh, you wanted more of that exchange. Ask and you shall receive.
I think we know
Why
what
don't you let me explain instead of talking over me, okay? Before we go through a litany of things you say I've changed on, why don't you ask me a question? Have I changed my opinion
Have you
on? That would
changed
be
your
sort
opinion?
of a better way to approach an interview.
Okay.
No.
Is Iran still not a threat?
You've editorialized. No. Listen. You've editorialized. Let me answer a question. You ask a question and you say, have your views changed, instead of editorializing and saying my views have changed.
Okay, quickly. Was
Okay, so
fair,
unfair?
unfair?
Unfair. What's the big deal about someone changing their mind? I mean, I wish more politicians were honest enough to say, yeah, I was wrong, I've
So he
changed
should
my
just
opinion.
say that instead of attacking her.
Ken, actually, that will be the last and only word. Yes, people are allowed to change their mind. I've heard about Hillary Clinton, for instance, evolving on gay marriage. It does happen. Anyway, when we come back, more Daily Wrap. This is Newsmax TV.